Now this is the most complicated part of the technical analysis portion. So it deals with a type of indicators called oscillators. Now oscillators are technical indicators that oscillate around a particular value, 0 or 100 or 1. So they are expected to be around that value. Any deviation from the value around which they oscillate, or let's say the oscillator oscillates around 0, any greatly positive value or any extremely negative value would indicate some discrepancy or some abnormality which can be used as a trading opportunity. So oscillators oscillate around a given value. Secondly, convergence of the oscillator with the market price indicates that the trend will continue. So if the oscillator is going positive and the market or the stock price is also going positive, then it indicates the trend will continue, be it the uptrend or the downtrend. If the oscillator is moving in the positive direction, whereas the actual market price is moving in the negative direction, then it indicates that the trend may change or the trend will change. So if the oscillator and stock prices are both moving in the same direction, then the trend is expected to continue and vice versa. So the first oscillator is called the rate of change or the momentum oscillator. It is computed as 100 multiplied by the last closing price, that is today's price, minus the price 5 days before, minus the closing price n periods earlier. Now this oscillator is expected to be or expected to move around 0. So the last closing price and the price 5 days before or 10 days before is expected to be the same. So this normally oscillates around 0. Sometimes the price will be higher, in which case it will be positive. Sometimes it will be lower, in which case it will be negative. So the decision rule for this oscillator is that you should buy when the oscillator changes from negative to positive. So if the oscillator is negative, it means what? That means the stock is falling, or the last closing price is lower than the price n periods earlier. So if the negative oscillator becomes positive, that means now the price is higher than the closing price n periods earlier. So the trend is expected to continue, or it is expected to move up. Similarly, if the oscillator changes from positive to negative, that is the last closing price was minus the closing price n periods ago was positive, that means the stock was probably moving up, which is why the latest price is higher. So if it moves from positive to negative, that means now the stock price has started falling because the last closing price now is lower than the price n periods earlier. That means it indicates a downtrend and you should sell. It indicates bearish sentiment. Here it indicates a bullish sentiment. The second oscillator is called the relative strength index. So the relative strength index is simply the ratio of the total number of stocks that increased in price upon the total number of stocks that decreased in price. The ratio is scaled such that it oscillates between 0 and 100. So if this ratio is very high, it would mean what? If the ratio is very high, it would mean that there are a lot of price increases and relatively few price decreases. So normally this index is used as a contrarian. So contrarian is a term that is used to identify the point where the analyst is expecting a reversal of the trend, or analyst is expecting the opposite of what the indicator is indicating. So if the ratio of total price increases to total price decreases is high, it means that there are more buyers or there's a lot of buying activity. So technical analyst will normally use this as a contra indicator. So he will conclude that the market is overbought and he will sell into this market if the relative strength index is greatly positive, that is greater than 70. If the relative strength index is less than 30, that means that price increases are relatively few and price decreases are high. That means there are more sellers than buyers. So again, the technical analyst will use this as a contra indicator and will conclude that the market is oversold. So if it is oversold, he will buy into the weakness. So this is the relative strength index. The final oscillator, and you don't have to remember the mathematics of these things, numericals will not be asked from them, you only need to know the concepts. So the third oscillator is called the moving average convergence divergence line, okay, or the MACD line. So the MACD line uses the same methodology broadly as the moving average methodology that we studied, but it uses exponentially smoothed moving averages. So rather than taking an average of the values themselves, it will take the average of the log of the values or something like that. So the exponential smoothing happens in such a way that a greater weight is put on the most recent values. So on the more recent averages or the more recent values, this methodology places a higher weight. That is the only difference that you need to understand. So just say that it uses exponentially smoothed moving averages. What is exponential smoothing? You don't need to know the details. Just know that this is a method that puts relatively higher weight on the recent observations, on the recent averages. Now there are two lines that we plot. In the MACD methodology, there are two lines that we plot. One is the MACD line, that is the difference between two, my apologies, it should be TWO2, the difference between two exponentially smoothed moving average lines. So one can be a short term and another can be a long term moving average. Now the MACD line has an expected value of 0. So it is the moving average of the 100-day and the 10-day. So the averages are expected to be the same more or less. So it oscillates around 0 but is not bounded. So MACD line is plotted as the difference between the two lines. So let's use the example of the MACD line. So let's assume the original black line was the exponentially smooth moving average, okay? And the blue line that I'm plotting is the ten-day moving average. So the black line is the original moving average and the blue line is the short-term moving average, exponentially smooth moving average. Okay, it's not a regular moving average. It is a moving average which places slightly higher weight on the recent observations. So what will be the difference between these two? It is sometimes higher, sometimes it is lower. So the difference would be something like this. Sometimes you see this line is above, sometimes this line is below the long-term moving average. So this line which represents the difference between the two values is called the MACD line. Now there is another line called the signal line. The signal line is the moving average of the MACD line. So of the MACD line, if I construct a moving average, now this is a regular moving average, then this line will be called the signal line. So first construct the MACD line. MACD line is the difference between the short-term moving average and the long-term moving average. And there is another line called the signal line. The signal line is the moving average of the MACD line. Now wherever the MACD line cuts the signal line from above, the trend is expected to be a downtrend. Then after that you use them in the same way as the moving average lines. So wherever the MACD line cuts the signal line from below, you can expect an uptrend. Whenever the MACD line cuts the signal line from above, you can expect a downtrend. The signal line is an exponentially smooth moving average of the MACD line. Okay, these graphs will not be asked. However, I use them just to explain the concept a little better. So the signal line is an exponentially smooth moving average of the MACD line. So the MACD line crossing above the signal line is viewed as a buy indication, and the MACD line crossing below will be viewed as a sell signal, just like the regular moving average lines that we studied. I'm sorry, there's one more oscillator. It's called the stochastic oscillator. So the stochastic oscillator is calculated from the latest closing price and the highest and lowest price in a recent period. Let's say about 14 days or 10 days. So the exact calculation of the stochastic oscillator is with the help of two lines. First is called the percentage K line. So percentage K line is the current price or the latest price minus the historical low upon high minus low. So every day I will compute this. Every day I compute the latest price minus the low upon the high minus low. This value will be less than 1. At best it can be 1, because at best the latest price can be the high. So whatever is this percentage will determine the percentage K line. I'll plot this every day, so I'll get a curve. And I also compute something called as the percentage D line. So a percentage D line is simply the 3-period average or the 3-day average of the percentage K line. And again we use them in the same manner as we use the moving average lines. That is, wherever the percentage K line crosses above the percentage D line, it indicates a buy or an uptrend, and wherever the percentage K line cuts the moving average line from above or goes below the moving average line, it indicates a sell. So this oscillator is called the stochastic oscillator, it will again remain between 0 and 1. Percentage K will always be between 0 and 1. That is the latest price minus the historical low. History means 14 days, for example, and the difference upon divided by the difference between the high and the low. Percentage D line is plotted as the 3-period average of the percentage K line, and then the two are used just as the moving average lines were used. If the intersection is from above, that is it crosses below, then it will be a downtrend. If the intersection is from below, that is crosses above, the percentage K line crosses above the percentage D line, then we will say that the signaling is that of an uptrend or a buy. So what we studied up till now was price-based indicators. So we studied the charts, and based on the pattern that the price formed historically, we could predict the future price movements. We will now study some non-price based indicators. So these technical indicators do not use the help of charts or do not try to forecast future trends based on previous trends. So the first non-price based indicator is the put-call ratio. So the put-call ratio can be computed as the volume of outstanding puts upon the volume of calls. So people will buy put options when they are scared that the market will fall, and people will buy call options when they feel that the market will go up. So if this ratio is high, that means people are buying more puts than calls. That means the outlook is bearish. Bearish outlook means the prices are expected to fall, and bullish outlook means that the prices are expected to rise. So if the ratio is low, that means the volume of calls is high and the volume of puts is low. So it indicates a bullish outlook. Now people or analysts, technical analysts, can use these ratios as trend, or they can use them to be contraindicators as well. So sometimes people think that extremely high ratio indicates a bearish sentiment, indicates a strong bearish sentiment and possible overselling. So the put call ratio can also be used as a contraindicator. So if the sentiment is really bearish, then you may want to buy into the weakness, or you may want to buy currently. So how you will interpret this ratio is left to your interpretation and your understanding on the markets. So they can actually indicate bearish sentiment, or they can indicate overselling. If they indicate overselling, you should buy into the weakness. If they indicate a bearish sentiment, you can possibly sell into it, or you can continue the trend. Okay, so put call ratio is one non-price based indicator that is used. Another indicator is called the volatility index. So the Black-Scholes model is not in the level 1 curriculum. When we go to the level, when we study level 2, we will study an option valuation model called the Black-Scholes model. The Black-Scholes model can be used to measure the implied volatility of options. So high volatility suggests that investors fear decline, and low volatility or low implied volatility of the market suggests that investors are confident, or investors expect up movements. Again, analysts can interpret them in a trend or take a contra view. So often analysts interpret the volatility index in a contrarian way. That is, if the volatility is high, that means investors are fearful, so the technical analyst will buy into it. He thinks that people are unreasonably fearful and the stock will react positively in the future. Similarly, if the people are unreasonably bullish, that is the implied volatility comes out to be very low, then the analyst will sell into the strength, thinking that people are unreasonably bullish. So just remember the terminology. High volatility suggests investors fear declines, and analysts can interpret this in a contrarian way. Okay, how is it exactly calculated? What implied volatility means is not in your curriculum. The third non-priced indicator is called is margin debt. So we studied in the chapter on equity analysis that to buy a stock, I don't have to pay the entire money upfront. I can use margining. That is, I can take a loan from the broker. So the stock is worth $100. I need only pay $50, and $50 is a loan given by broker. If the stock falls, then I need to pay up more margin money corresponding to the maintenance margin. Please go back on the video on equity analysis if you've forgotten what this means and how this is done. So you can buy on margin. That is, you can take a loan from the broker. It has been seen that when margin debt increases, that means people are taking more and more loans from the broker. That means they are buying more and more. So you can expect that in the future the market will fall as people need to sell the loans, or people need to sell the stocks to repay these loans. So if the margin debt becomes very high, that means it indicates that the market is probably overbought, because people have taken a lot of loans and bought stocks. As margin debt decreases, as people pay off those loans or don't borrow more, the buying intensity in the market reduces and stock prices tend to fall. So as margin debt decreases, stock prices also decrease. Again, the analysts can try to go with the trend or take a contra view in this scenario. If the margin debt is very high, then the technical analyst will say we should sell now, because as the unwinding of this debt happens, the market will correct. Whereas if the margin debt is just starting to increase, then the analyst may say that margin debt is increasing, so stock prices will increase as the margin funding keeps going up, as people buy more and more. Just like margin debt, we can study a ratio called the short interest ratio. So when will you short a stock? You short a stock when you think the stock prices will go high, or rather stock prices will fall. Now, to short the stock, you need to borrow the stock and sell it. Again, go back and view the video on equity if you've forgotten what shorting means. So to short an asset, you need to borrow the asset and then sell it in the market and then buy it back. So if a lot of short interest is there, if a lot of people have shorted the stock, that means they're expecting the stock price to decrease. However, you can also take a contra view that in the future these short positions will have to be covered. That is, the investor will have to buy back the stock and give it back to the lender. So as a technical analyst, you may expect future positive stock movement on account of short covering, or you can expect further shorting and expect that the stock price will fall. So short interest ratio also gives indications about the future price behavior, as too much shorting may mean that buying demand may come from short covering, and an increasing short interest ratio may imply that the stock will continue to correct as people are selling more and more of it. Another non-price based indicator tries to understand the flow of funds. So up till now, whatever we studied tries to basically use the price information and predict the future stock price behavior. So we will now combine the price data with the volume data and try to predict the future stock price movements. So there's an index called ARMS index, also called the short-term trading index, which is computed as the number of advancing issues upon the number of declining issues upon the volume of advancing issues divided by the volume of declining issues. So just remember this ratio, the short-term trading index or the ARMS index, the number of stocks that go up upon number of stocks that go down divided by volume of stocks that go up upon the volume of stocks that go down. Volume means the number of shares. So if DLF goes up or 10 stocks go up, this number will be 10. 10 stocks go down, this number will again be 10. Volume means how many exact number of shares of each of those stocks went up. So let's say 10 million advances happened and 3 million decline happens. So if the value is close to 1, then it suggests that funds are flowing evenly to advancing and declining stocks. If the number is greater than 1 or it's significantly higher than 1, that means more volume or more funds are flowing into declining issues and less in terms of advancing issues, or less volume is in advancing issues. Volume means number of shares. So let's say DLF and ITC went up. Then how many issues advanced? 2 issues went up. Let's say ACC and Tata Motors fell. So how many issues declined? 2 issues declined. But let's say 20 shares of DLF went up and 100 shares of ITC went up. So there are 2 issues only, but there are 120 volume. So volume is the total sum of the number of shares of each of the advancing issues. Similarly for declining issues, the number and the volume, that is the sum of the number of shares of each of the declining issues. So value greater than 1 means more volume in declining stocks. And a number less than 1 means that more volume is in advancing stocks. Historically, it has been seen that when this number goes significantly above 1, markets see a sharp fall in prices, and if this ratio falls significantly below 1, then the market is seen to have large up movements or large profits. So remember the flow of funds or the short-term trading index. It is the number of advancing issues upon the number of declining issues upon the volume of advancing issues divided by the volume of declining issues. Just understand, it's a ratio, guys. If this ratio and volume of declining issues is higher, obviously the ratio will be greater than 1. If the volume of advancing issues is higher, the ratio will be less than 1. Just like we studied margin funding. We can use margin debt to understand the buying pattern of the market. So increase in margin debt suggests that investors want to buy more, and decline in margin debt indicates that investors are exiting the market. So if they're taking more and more margin debt from the broker, they're buying more. A very interesting non-price based indicator is the mutual fund cash position. So mutual fund cash position is the amount of cash that big funds are holding. Typically, it has been seen that mutual funds underperform the market. So a mutual fund manager would be holding cash when he would hold cash when he expects the market to fall. So understand, mutual funds are normally long only portfolios. They cannot short positions. So mutual funds typically are not allowed to short. Hence, if they are bearish on the market, then what will they do? They will sell their assets and hold cash. If they are positive on the market, then they will not hold cash. They will invest everything in the stocks. It has been seen that mutual funds normally underperform. So this indicator is used as a contrarian. So if mutual funds are holding a lot of cash, it represents future buying power. So you should buy into it because mutual funds are expected to buy soon. Similarly, if mutual funds are not holding any cash, that is, they have invested all the money in the market, then it is expected that in the future they may have to redeem, or they may have to sell their assets, or there may be selling pressure in the future. So a low mutual fund cash position means sell. A high mutual fund cash position means you should buy, according to technical analysts. The number of IPOs and the number of QIPs, follow-up fund offerings, secondary offerings, also indicate that the market has peaked. Normally, new equity issuances, secondary offerings, etc. happen when the market is good. That is, promoters think that their stock is getting a good value, so they are willing to sell their own stock. So new equity issuances mean when the companies sell their own stocks. Companies will sell their own stocks only when they think they're significantly valued or they're highly valued. So it has been seen that in times of market peaks or extremely bullish sentiments, a lot of equity issuances happen in secondary offerings, whereas during market bottoms there are no IPOs or secondary offerings present. We now come to a very interesting theory of stock price behavior, which says that market prices or stock prices move in cycles. The cycles can be short term, they can be 1 day, few minutes, few seconds, or there can be centuries, decades, they can be super cycles. So this theory, also called the Elliott wave theory, says that market prices can be described by an interconnected set of cycles, which may range from a few periods to centuries. According to the Elliott wave theory, an uptrend consists of 5 upward waves, or upward moves have 5 waves, whereas downward move consists of 3 waves. Whereas in a downtrend, a downward move consists of 5 waves, whereas the upward move consists of 3 waves. So markets move in cycles. There is upward movement, there is downward movement. The trend can be upward if there are 5 up waves and only 3 down waves. A trend can be downward when there are 5 down waves and 3 up waves. Let's understand what this means. So what does this pattern look like, guys? The first pattern, never mind the numbers, never mind the waves, Just tell me, what does this pattern look like? An uptrend or a downtrend? An uptrend. This pattern looks like a downtrend. Now, Elliott wave, let's just understand now what the Elliott wave theory says. It says that in an uptrend, the up movement will have 5 waves, whereas the down movement will have just 3 waves. So, each movement, each line is a wave. So, you understand, guys? This is 1. This is 2. So let me plot the waves for you. This is the first wave. This is the second wave. It's smaller. Third wave. Fourth wave. And the fifth wave. So the uptrend has 5 waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas the downtrend has just 3 waves. Let's see the waves in the downtrend. 1, 2, 3. And this is where the downtrend stops. Again, the upward will have 5 waves. So if the market has 5 waves in an uptrend and 3 waves in a downtrend, then the trend can overall be said to be an uptrend. Whereas in the case of a downtrend, see that the down movement will have 5 waves, whereas the up movement will just have 3 waves. So let's see how a downtrend happens according to the Elliott wave theory. So this is the first downtrend, first wave in a downtrend, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave. So there are 5 down waves and there will be only 3 in the uptrend. So there will be 1, 2 and 3. After that again the down will start. So there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the down. So in a downtrend, the down moves have 5 waves, whereas the up moves just have 3 waves. In an uptrend, the up moves have 5 waves, whereas the down moves have just 3 waves. Okay, this pattern is one way. This is an up move. It's too small for me to take it separately. So the Elliott wave theory says that upward moves consist of 5 waves and downward moves consist of 3 waves in an uptrend. In a downtrend, downward moves consist of 5 waves and upward moves consist of 3 waves. So that's all that he wants to tell you about the Elliott wave theory. Okay, it is originally much more complicated and a lot more things can be derived out of these, but that's what we need to understand. He then says that the size of these waves, that is, what is the extent of the up move, what is the extent of the down move, are thought to correspond with the Fibonacci ratios or Fibonacci ratios. So before we understand what the Fibonacci ratios are, let's understand what a Fibonacci series is. So a Fibonacci series is a series in which each term is the sum of the previous 2 terms. So each term in the series is the same as the sum of the previous 2 terms. So the first 2 terms are 0 and 1. So this term will be 0 plus 1, 1. This term will be 1 plus 1, 2. This term will be 2 plus 1, 3. 3 plus 2, 5. 5 plus 3, 8. 8 plus 5, 13. 13 plus 8, 21. 21 plus 13, 34. So on and so forth. So each term in a Fibonacci series is the sum of the previous 2 terms. Now, technical analysts believe that a down leg or an up leg is normally the ratio of the consecutive terms in the Fibonacci series. So the downward or the down leg is normally 2/3 of the up leg, or 1/2 of the down leg, or 13/21 of the down leg, or 8/13 of the up leg. So down leg is some consecutive ratio of the up leg. Similarly, the up leg or the price target can be some consecutive ratio of the consecutive terms. So it could be 34/21, or 8/5, or 5/3, or 3/2 of the previous high, or of the down leg, or any such ratio. So the Fibonacci ratios are used to predict the down moves or the up moves using the Elliott wave theory. The property of the Fibonacci numbers is that as the numbers get larger, the ratio of consecutive terms converge to 0.618 if I take 8/13, that is the previous two terms, or 1.61 take if I take the consecutive two terms. So that's how we use the Fibonacci ratios and the Elliott wave to predict future stock prices. So just remember that uptrend has 5 waves, down moves have 3 waves in an uptrend, and vice versa for a downtrend. The size of the waves correspond to Fibonacci ratios. That's all you need to know. Finally, technical analysts also conduct something called as intermarket analysis. That is, see how bonds are moving, currencies are moving, other markets are moving to predict stock prices. So they try to calculate the interrelationships between major asset classes: stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies. So you can use different tools like the relative strength ratio, that is the up move or down move, to determine which class is outperforming, which class is underperforming, and try to derive certain conclusions out of it. So intermarket analysis studies interrelationships between different markets. That's all that we need to know from the level 1 perspective. So that was about the review on technical analysis, guys. So it's not a very heavy weight on the exam. It's not a very important topic. So keep it for the end, but no point leaving it out. Okay, read it. One or two questions may come from this topic. Let's try to get that right also. Let's aim for 100% marks. It's okay even if we get 99. Alright, thanks a lot.